to have the opportunity to join you as part of this very important discussion. The subject of capital punishment is one that does enjoy a great deal of debate in South Africa, given the very high levels of violent crime in our country. However, our position as South Africa's government, Parliament, and broadly the people of South Africa is reflected in the following remarks. Since the advent of democracy, we had abolished the death penalty in our country. Before achieving democracy and freedom, South Africa had one of the highest rates of judicial execution in the world. Between 1960 and 1989, just over 3,000 prisoners were executed. This translated into roughly 100 persons a year. The application of the death penalty in South Africa bore the heavy marks of racial apartheid, with poor young black men forming the overwhelming majority of those hanged. Democratic South Africa, following the adoption of the interim constitution, abolished the death penalty and also adopted measures to recognize and commemorate those who had been hanged as part of essentially political executions in our country. A museum has been constructed in the prison building housing the former gallows. So everybody who was to be executed or who was sentenced to the death penalty was hanged at that site. We decided to establish a commemorative museum at that very site. We've taken significant steps in an attempt to rectify our brutal, racist, and political application of the death penalty under apartheid. We've also taken steps to ensure that the affected families are recognized and supported, particularly the families of what were essentially political prisoners who were executed by decision of the apartheid state. We take our role as a member of the ICDP very seriously. In order to contribute, we support any action that is directed at achieving the abolition of the death penalty in all regions of the world. And we do this always in a collaborative and constructive fashion through engaging with the countries concerned, because laws and contexts differ, and we cannot impose a practice on any country. We as the government of South Africa feel very strongly about the universal right to life, and indeed we enshrined this in our constitution. We ensured that we abolished the death penalty, but of course we still recognize that the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in section 6.2 provides that the states which have not yet abolished the death penalty can use the practice in accordance with the law of the state for criminal offenders of serious or heinous crimes. We recognize thus that all countries have the sovereign right to develop their own legal system in accordance with their international law obligations. We advocate for a balanced approach and of course recognize that states have different priorities at different times. As such, we do encourage a gradual shift toward a moratorium on the death penalty. And when we discuss with our partners internationally or with countries that still practice the death penalty, we do encourage this shift. Notwithstanding, states still retain the death penalty. We believe that we must engage them in constructive dialogue. We do this bilaterally, as I said, or within international institutions where the subject enjoys attention. We will continue our dialogue with fellow countries on the African continent. Many of our neighbors still impose the death penalty, although we note that increasingly this is being commuted to life imprisonment. And of course, we face challenges on extradition matters when our law does not permit the loss of life through a death penalty, and our country seeking extradition permits this. So we have had very difficult legal challenges to confront in this regard. Our Extradition Act makes no mention of the death penalty as a ground for granting extradition. And we have maintained that position and will continue to do so. Having said that, I must conclude by indicating that given violent crime in South Africa, there continues to be constant emergence of a search for the death penalty as a solution to what we regard as primarily a social challenge posed by our violent past. Thus, the debate as to whether there should be a reintroduction of such a penalty continues in the public domain. The certainty exists in terms of our Constitution and the practice in sentencing of our judicial system. Thank you. I hope it indicates the South African position